I think this might be the first time I'm recording just at the end of the month. We're at the end of November 2022, so let's have a look at all the books I read this month. I'm going to try and be quicker. I'm aware that my wrap-ups can get a little long, so I'll try and be snippy. And to be honest, I see what I've got to talk about, and I don't think I should ramble that much. So, as always, I'm going to start off with the digital books so that I don't forget them. First is the first 3 volumes of Silver Spoon. This is by the same author that wrote Full Metal Alchemist, and the subject matter could not be more different. This is not a big fantasy story. This is a very... I don't want to say slice of life, because I feel like that's not quite right. But that's also the closest frame of reference. So let's say it's slice of life set in a farm school, an agricultural school. That's the better way to put it. So we have a character that has chosen a school purely based on the fact that it means he can move out of his house. They get dorms and they get fed, and to him that is the only thing that matters. At this point, even 3 volumes in, we're only just getting to peek at why that's the case. But early on, it just means that he's this one strange person who is amongst a lot of people who are pretty much all relatives of farmers. They're all kids of farm families. So everyone knows exactly what they're going to do. They'll either inherit something or they have their eye on a specific goal. And he feels very overwhelmed by this. But the great thing is you get to see him slowly become part of this really difficult routine, because they do a lot of chores to do with the farms, and they also have to take part in a club that is also very active. He ends up going to the equestrian club, mostly based on a girl, but he soon finds out that those horse clubs, man, are pretty much just dealing with poop and cleaning the horse. This is a lesson I once learned and then wanted nothing to do with horses ever again. So the reason why I hesitate to call it slice of life is, even though it's very true to life, it's probably too close to reality for a true comfort read. You know, there's some challenging things in here, just how people who deal with farm life deal with. So, for example, early on he gets to see some little piglets, and he makes the mistake of wanting to name one, and his entire class says, "What are you doing? Don't name the pig. That is a rookie mistake, because very soon that pig is going to be a lot bigger, and that is going to the slaughterhouse." So there's a lot of facing of truths and what that means, which is really great, and I really appreciate that everyone around him is very no nonsense and they kind of accept it. But to varying degrees. I think in volume 3, a teacher says, "Right, I have a video of a slaughterhouse. This is purely optional. Come and see it." And those who feel like they should experience it, go. There are some who have seen something like that before and don't want to face it again. And there are some who just do not think they can deal with it at all, which is very true to real life, and I really appreciate that. So my dad used to be a butcher, so I grew up kind of not facing the death of an animal, but I kind of grew up seeing that transformation of a body turn into the meat. So I kind of feel an affinity with some of these characters, where I've grown up with that no nonsense attitude of understanding where stuff has come from. And I really like that this comic covers that so accurately and so well. Despite that, it is weirdly relaxing, and I'm probably gonna keep going with this manga. The subject matter might be a little bit too tough for a true comfort read for some, but I'm really enjoying it. Next is a book that I read on my Kobo. I nearly said Kindle. It's not my Kindle, it's my Kobo. And that is Mexican Gothic. So this was huge on BookTube last year, I think. And I think it came up as a deal at some point, and it's been sat on my e-reader for ages, and I finally got round to it as something I wanted it as a bit of a palate cleanser because I'm deep into some fantasy right now. I must say, I think this is the problem with these books that get such big reviews on BookTube, is you kind of go, oh wow, everyone loves it, it must be amazing. And I think it ended up being more of a 3-star book for me. I'm not sure how much of that is like, maybe it wasn't the right time, maybe this isn't my genre. Like, I think I kind of like gothic-y thrillers, but I'm also aware sometimes I can be a little bit impatient with them, and for the setup portion, I'm just like, right, okay, but when are we going to find out? Just tell me. Good example, family member lent me the book The Wonder, and as soon as I found out it was historical, I gave it back because I just knew I wasn't going to vibe with it. But the premise was something I wanted to know more about. If you don't know it, it's about a nurse that goes to observe a girl in Ireland who hasn't eaten for 4 months and yet is weirdly alive. And so it's to do with how she's stayed alive. And it's more a drama than a thriller, I think, because the answer isn't really that important. It's one of those books. So I'm glad I watched the film, because then I got the answer a heck of a lot quicker. But in Mexican Gothic, the answer to the question of what the heck is going on, I think it was pretty satisfying. I did enjoy the revelation, because it's sort of... Okay, I'm going to put this down. It's sort of leading you to one potential answer, and the character's kind of on the edge of it when she's joking. But I feel like it's close enough that it's satisfying whilst also being very out there, that it's fun to readers who enjoy a little bit more strange concepts. So obviously I don't want to say more than that, it will spoil it. For me though, I think the first half was maybe a little bit slow. Yeah, and I was just okay. I was just like going along with it. It wasn't too boring to put down, but I wasn't massively interested. The second half does ramp up, and it was a little bit more entertaining, but fortunately it wasn't quite enough to be more than a 3 for me. Next is the first two books of the Lycanius trilogy. I've done a review of the first one on the channel, so I won't go into it too long. But I'm having a lot of fun. I mean, I've maybe preemptively put this on my top 10 fantasy list ever, not just of the year. I think a lot of that comes from the characters and the intricate plot that is starting to get more and more complicated. So the first one, I said that it settles into a rhythm where we're jumping between like 4 different viewpoints, and I'm always having fun in all 4 like points of view. And I think that's really quite impressive, because I think once you split off into 4, there's always at least one where you're like, I don't really care what they're doing. I'm not that bothered. But that just did not happen here. I was excited at the start of every new chapter. That kind of carries on into book 2. But here we have a lot more plot and complex things coming into it. It's almost as if a lot of the setup is happening in book 2 rather than book 1. because book one is setting up for these kind of mysteries and this journey, but book two is the author kind of going, okay, I need to tell you some things. I think book one is a 5 for me, but book two might dip down to a 4.5. I think the only issue I have with it is we have a lot of these flashbacks for one of the characters, and that is the majority of their story. And sometimes that's fun, but I felt like I reached a point where I was kind of done with being in flashbacks and I wanted to see some movement in their current plot. Like, I absolutely get that that's necessary, and that will probably benefit how things read in book three, but that's just how I felt. I was just getting a little bit tired of it. And I was also getting tired of something else. That was a very clever joke if you read his books. So, some authors all feel like they have a favourite phrase or a favourite descriptor. James Islington, he likes characters that rub their foreheads. This doesn't always necessarily bother me that much in other books, but I was noticing it a lot. Like, I think at one point a character did it twice on one page, and I was like, no, okay, you need them to do something else. You need to pick another body part, because and I think because every character did it, it wasn't even like it was one character's trait. It wasn't like a tick of one person. Everyone rubs their forehead at some point, and it was starting to drive me a little bit crazy. Please stop. When you just spot these things, and when you spot it, there's no going back, and then it's there forever. And I'm sorry if you hadn't spotted it, and I've ruined that for you now. Join me in hell. But these are minor issues in the end. I am loving the story so much. I'm looking forward to book 3. I already have it, but I think I need a little bit of a break because I'm worried of having burnout. So I'm going to read something else for a few days, maybe a week, and then I'll hop back onto it. I'm going to finish off with some non-fiction. What's Your Type by Merv Emra. So unfortunately, this wasn't what I was expecting at all. So this is supposed to be the story of the Myers-Briggs test, and how it took over the world. So I kind of thought we'd have a little bit of story about the two women, the mother and daughter. If you didn't know, it was mother and daughter who kind of, between the two of them, came up with this test. Like they each kind of took turns, or they had moments in their life where they each worked on it. So these two women came up with this personality test, and I thought the book would give us a little bit of background about them and how they did it, but I was expecting it to jump forward, because there's this introduction where the writer of the book goes to an event where they do the personality test, and she's paid a fortune to do it, and then she was like asking questions about the person who made the test, and people were being really, standoffish about it. They're like, no, the details are kept under lock and key. I was like, oh, what are they hiding? So it set up this intrigue, and I also thought we'd get a lot more of Myers-Briggs use in the modern world. So this might be something you've come across, but personality tests are sometimes used by things like recruiters for companies now, which is crazy to me because you might as well send out a questionnaire about what your horoscope is. Yeah, if you didn't know, the Myers-Briggs personality test has kind of been shown to be mostly nonsense. answers can change day to day, things like that. So I thought we'd get more into it, that was what interested me. It was, how can this thing that is mostly a game at this point, how this can be used in modern businesses and how it affects the world. That's what I thought we were going to get into. No, this was a very stretched out, detailed telling of the two women, their lives, and their development of the test. And we don't really go past that. So as a history book, it's interesting. And there are also some really interesting passages about setting up a spy school essentially, and using some of these tests to figure out who would be a good spy. So there's interesting stuff in here. It's just not what I expected, and it's always hard to overcome that. So it makes it kind of hard to rate. Maybe it's a 3, maybe it's a 4, I don't know. Whoever wrote the blurb and the little thing, what's the word? The pitch on the front of the book, needed to come up with something else, because that was a little bit misleading. And it leaves me wanting the book that I thought I was buying. I want a book that goes undercover and then tells me things like, hey, at Google they've used this personality test and this scientist says it's nonsense. I want some spice about what's going on in the current landscape. But it is what it is. That's what I got. It was interesting enough. So if you want the history of those two women and where they got their kind of ideas from, go for it. Like I said, there's interesting stuff in here. There's also some wild stuff about how the mother... Hi, editing, Emma here. I realised I wasn't doing... Yes, I am still wearing this cardigan. I wasn't doing a very good job of explaining this section of the book. So, Catherine Briggs... so Catherine Briggs, she's the mother of the mother-daughter duo. And then something happens in the era after her daughter's grown up and moved out. She's sort of gone into amateur psychoanalysis, which is already on sketchy grounds. But people know her for this, and this family has this daughter who's underperforming at school, so they ask for her help. And then she starts having going on car rides with the girl, and asking about her dreams, and then analysing her and making suggestions. But this sort of goes too far, and to the point where the parents no longer want to do this. I think they even suspect something dodgy is going on, even more dodgy than what she is doing, and tell her to stop. She sends a letter to her hero Jung, who is an actual psychiatrist / psychologist. He's her hero, and she writes to him about her being dismissed and how terrible it is. And he's like, well, yeah, what did you expect? This was a terrible idea. So yeah, a lot of amateur stuff going on. And she basically becomes like a Karen at the end. How dare they not want my help? So yeah, and that's the story I was trying to tell. And also, something I find keeps happening. We're in Tangent Town now, I'm sorry. But something I find has kept happening this year is that I read something in one book, and then it ties into something in the next book I read, or a book I read soon after, in a really unexpected way. So the guy I mentioned, the psychologist or psychiatrist, whichever, he might even have just been a philosopher, I don't know, but he was called Jung, and he looked into the personality that's shown in dreams and things like that, and then he gets a mention in Mexican Gothic. I was like, hey, I know who that Jung is. I know that guy. I swear this has happened so many times this year. It's reading, man. You learn things. It's so good. And I think I'm out of books. I don't think that's too bad. I've read 2 big fantasies and a bunch of manga to break it up. It's been lovely. My plans for December are Jonathan Stranger Mr. Norrell, which might go into January. It's a 1,000-page book. And Hogfather. And maybe Christmas Carol, because I've not actually sat and read that. So, as of tomorrow, it's all about the Christmassy winter vibes, and I can't wait. It's going to be so much fun. But it also means that I've been kind of stressed so that I can finish things on time. I know that's not the goal, but there we are. Tell me what your reading plans are or what you read in November. I'd love to hear about it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye!